The man took part in the hunter qualification exam. What followed shocked even the world's top S-rank elites. All because he defeated a rising star of the hunter world using nothing but basic hand-to-hand combat. The sight left every examiner stunned. Even the strongest member of an S-rank guild couldn't suppress the urge to personally test the limits of his strength. What they didn't know was that Hyukin had spent 80 long years fighting in another world, an undefeated spear god. He had once slain the demon king of that world with his own hands. After completing his mission, exhaustion finally caught up with him. So Hyukin made a request to the goddess. He asked that all his memories and experiences be preserved and that he be sent back to Earth. The goddess agreed, but the version of him on Earth was already dead. So she placed his soul into a new vessel. In the next instant, a beam of light crashed down onto Hyukin. That new vessel happened to be a body on the verge of death. Even so, the goddess believed he would live a completely new life through it. When Hyukin opened his eyes again, he was back on Earth. That damned other world had put him through endless suffering. Now returned to Earth. His new body was nothing more than a teenage boy. He turned on the kitchen faucet and saw clean, uncontaminated water flowing out. With just a simple press, fire appeared. This was real magic. The mages of that other world could all go to hell. More importantly, this world still had his favorite food, fried chicken cutlets. The genuine texture brought tears to his eyes. This was what real food was supposed to taste like. In 80 years of non-stop combat, he had never eaten a proper meal. At last, he could live like an ordinary person in this world. What Occam didn't notice was the faint red glow lighting up outside the window. He stepped in the bathroom and took a long, comfortable shower. Although he still felt completely out of sync with this world, he believed a better life was finally within reach. Then, without warning, a grotesque face appeared outside his window. Startled him badly. How could something like that exist on Earth? Moments later, a broadcast sounded behind him, issuing an emergency announcement. A corrosion rift had appeared in the apartment complex. All residents were ordered to evacuate to the underground shelter immediately. Dugan had no idea what a corrosion rift was nor what was actually happening. The next sight left him utterly shaken. Several humanoid monsters were clinging densely to the glass of his window. Their sharp claws were about to pierce straight through it. The moment they were about to break in, Hoken spun around and bolted. It was clear now, this Earth was no longer the Earth he remembered and he needed answers fast. These humanoid creatures looked eerily similar to the monsters he had faced in another world, who can quickly move to the edge of the window, slipping out of their line of sight. Once they were gone, he climbed out through the window without hesitation. He figured the safest move was to follow the broadcast instructions and head for the shelter. That was when he noticed a child standing ahead. He was about to take the kid with him when he realized the boy was actually planning to go back toward the monsters. The child's face was still young, yet his eyes were unwavering. He even talked about taking down the monsters and asked Hyukin if he wanted to join him. Hyukin couldn't help but feel baffled. Were kids these days really this fearless? From a child who can learn that Earth had been like this for a full 13 years. Corrosion rifts were the gateways through which monsters emerged, and no one knew how they formed or when and where they would appear. The realization left Hyukin frustrated. After all the hardship it took to return to Earth, it had turned into a living hell anyway. He casually asked the child who the strongest hunter on Earth was right now. Without hesitation, the child answered with the name Lee Son. Lee Son belonged to the Ganabi Guild, one of the top 10 guilds on Earth. She wielded a massive greatsword and was currently handling a corrosion rift in Sherwin. Even knowing that powerful hunters existed, the idea of ordinary people fighting monsters still felt unreal to Hyukin. Suddenly, Hyukin covered the child's mouth. He signaled for him to stay quiet. Monsters were approaching from ahead. A closer look revealed 5 monsters directly in front of them, but Hyukin knew better. There were 5 in sight and 1 more hiding. Fortunately, this new body also seemed to possess strength beyond that of a normal human enough to deal with them. Still, he wasn't confident he could protect the child in the middle of a fight, yet leaving him behind wasn't an option either. As Hyukin weighed his options, a familiar sensation washed over him. The air carried traces of a faint blue energy. It was mana. At that moment, he was certain this was exactly the same as the world he had once known. In the next instant, one of the monsters burst into flames, the attack launched by Hyukin himself. Although the mana he had accumulated over 80 years was long gone, as long as mana existed in the air, he could gather it again. That meant he could still wield the power engraved into his soul, the Paradox Flame. The firepower was slightly disappointing, but dealing with these few monsters would be more than enough. The child stared at him in awe. "I never thought you'd have such a unique ability." With that, the child even prepared to charge in and finish off the monsters himself. Hooky could only feel speechless. The monsters hadn't even fully locked onto their target yet, so why rush out now? Just as Hyukin had predicted, the young boy instantly became the target locked onto by the monsters. Terror flooded the boy's face. Fortunately, Hyukin grabbed the boy's arm in time. He signaled for the boy to hand him the stick lying on the ground. He needed to borrow the kid's weapon. In the next moment, 3 monsters charged straight toward Hyukin. The instant the weapon reached his hand, Hyukin's gaze completely changed. A sharp whooshing sound cut through the air as he swung the stick. Immediately after, the 3 monsters were cut cleanly in half at the waist. In that moment, Hyukin felt the familiar sensation of his former days as the spear god returned. The boy was left utterly speechless by the scene. In his eyes, Hyukin was clearly no ordinary person. He had to be a hunter hiding his true identity. Yet inside, Hyukin was burning with anger. The peaceful life he had fought so hard to reclaim had turned out like this. Soon, wearing an irritated expression, Hyukin led the boy into the underground shelter. The boy's mother recognized her child at a glance. She repeatedly thanked Hyukin, saying it must have been him who saved her son. Seeing the woman's well-tailored, high-end clothing, Hyukin froze for a moment. So the boy was actually from a wealthy family. No wonder he had acted so arrogantly. At that moment, the entire building began to shake violently. In just a brief instant, a monster smashed through the entrance and forced its way inside. Everyone fled in panic, yet Hyukin remained standing where he was. The boy turned back and shouted for him to run, saying that even Hyukin wouldn't stand a chance against this monster, but Hyukin still didn't move. He had thought he'd returned to a familiar world, but now it was clear. This place was no different from the other world at all. He asked the boy beside him why. If his family was so wealthy, he still wanted to become a hunter instead of hiding somewhere safe and living comfortably. The boy said his father had been killed. Back then, their family had also been hiding in shelter, yet his father was still slaughtered by monsters. From that moment on, the boy understood there was no truly safe place on Earth. That was why he swore to become a hunter, the strongest hunter, to wipe out all corrosion rifts and save the world even if it sounded laughable. Before he could finish, Hyukin interrupted him. He smiled, a smile filled with quiet reassurance, and said the boy would become a great hunter one day. But unfortunately, he would never be able to save this world. As Hyukin's words fell, the boy's mother desperately pulled him, urging him to run. At that exact moment, a thunderous explosion erupted behind them. When the boy turned around, he was shocked to discover the monster everyone had feared was already dead, killed by Hyukin with a single hand. The reason Hyukin said the boy couldn't save the world was simple, because that job was his and he happened to have plenty of experience doing it. After dealing with a monster who can return home to gather basic information about the world, he also discovered that his account balance had dropped to a mere 3,001. The original owner of this body had been a logistics company employee, but the company went bankrupt due to corrosion rifts, leaving him unemployed. Mrs. Hyukin was wondering how to earn money and survive. He noticed a hunter recruitment notice on his phone. Time quickly advanced to the next day inside the Hunter Association building. Today, a grand selection ceremony was about to take place. The event attracted numerous hunter scouts, all hoping to recruit promising newcomers into their guilds. However, one scout believed that this batch of hunters had no real standouts, just a group of minor characters. Yet this election event also drew the attention of one of the world's top 10 hunters, Lee Son. Almost everyone in the arena looked on with admiration. This was someone they usually only saw on the news. Yet here she was in person. Everyone assumed Lee Son had come for Han Sung-ah, a top graduate from the Hunter Academy who had awakened electro-control abilities. What they didn't know was that Lee Son hadn't taken Sung-ah seriously at all. At best, she saw her as a walking power bank. A colleague beside her remarked that Han Sung-ah's abilities could still be useful in certain situations. At that, a man next to them adjusted his sunglasses and said calmly that plenty of academy prodigies collapsed the moment they faced real combat. Lee Son seemed to like that answer. She casually tossed the colleague a piece of candy as praise. After all, training in real combat were entirely different things. For students who had only experienced controlled exercises, adapting to real battles took time, and Han Sung-ah was no exception. Before long, the match below was about to begin. Lee Se-eun watched with interest, hoping to discover a promising talent. Newcomers, show me strength worth wanting. The host looked surprised when he checked the contestant's profile. Just a civilian, someone who hadn't even attended the Hunter Academy. Meanwhile, Hukin zipped up his combat suit, his hand firmly gripped the weapon issued by the association. The host continued to mock the contestant, wondering how much courage it took to step onto the stage. And now, entering the arena, contestant Hukan. To be honest, Hukin still wasn't quite used to this new name. The rules were simple. Only association-issued weapons were allowed, and lethal damage was forbidden. What Hukin truly wanted was to use this hunter exam as a stepping stone to gain higher authority. Across from him, a blonde-haired youth looked arrogant, clearly not taking Hukin seriously. As the referee raised his hand high, the first match officially began. The moment it started, the blonde youth charged forward, thrilled at the thought of fighting someone who couldn't even gather mana. Yet, Hukin's expression remained completely unchanged. To him, his opponent was nothing but openings. In the next instant, Hukin drove his weapon straight into the ground. Then, to the youth's shock, Hukin vanished from sight. Confusion flashed through the blonde youth's mind. Is he a speed-type hunter? By the time he realized what was happening, Hukin was already behind him. Your technique is sloppy, he said. I don't even need a weapon to deal with you. The next second, Hukin slammed a punch into his abdomen, nearly making the blonde youth vomit everything he'd eaten the night before. Just as his opponent was about to collapse, Hukin stepped down and forced him back upright. A brutal uppercut followed, shattering the man's jaw. The blonde youth, who had been so arrogant moments ago, was now barely conscious. That actually caught Hukin off guard. He knew the guy wasn't his match, but this was a bit too fragile. He'd chosen to fight bare-handed precisely because a spear might have injured him too badly. After a brief thought, Hukin relaxed. The kid was probably just a rookie. This clearly wasn't the average level of a hunter, but the sight left Lee Son frozen in place. What exactly is this guy? She immediately pulled up Hukan's profile, a logistics company employee. A colleague muttered that the young man had almost no mana reserves. Power like that should require years of accumulation. If not, then it could only be chalked up to luck. The explanation earned nothing more than a cold shut-up from Lee Son and a piece of candy tossed his way. In her eyes, it was far more likely that Hukin was deliberately refusing to accumulate mana. On the arena floor, Hukin rolled his neck, feeling slightly stiff. Still, if he wanted to prove his strength, the fight needed to end decisively. In the next instant, he was already standing beside the blonde youth. His fist rose high as he spoke calmly. Don't worry. His punch won't be lethal. By then, the blonde youth was terrified out of his mind, begging Hukin non-stop with a dull bang, who can knock him unconscious with a single punch. The scene sparked intense discussion among the hunter scouts in the stands. As others debated his strength, Lee Son made up her mind. She would test Hukin herself. A companion asked her where she was heading. Lee Son replied simply that she was going to see the association president. I have something to ask of him. Meanwhile, Hukin's battles continued. No matter who stepped onto the stage, the result was the same. They couldn't even withstand 3 moves. Hukin couldn't help wondering what exactly the Hunter Academy was teaching to produce fighters this week. Finally, after defeating several opponents, someone worthy appeared before him. The moment she stepped onto the stage, murmurs spread through the crowd. She was the candidate Han Sung-ah, and everyone was eager to see whether she could stop the mysterious prodigy's winning streak. Hukin glanced at her casually, yet interest immediately sparked. She possessed the densest mana he had seen all day. Han Sung-ah spoke without restraint. You've made it this far on luck alone. That ends now. Hukin sneered inwardly. Were these cookie-cutter lines also part of the Hunter Academy curriculum? The next second, Han Senga slowly drew her blade. Golden light flared in her eyes. You probably don't have any special abilities, but that doesn't mean I'll go easy on you. The words actually made Hukin pause. How could he not have special abilities? He simply knew that using them would seriously injure her. Han Sang-ah took a deep breath. She dropped into a crouch, streams of mana gathering beside her hand. Golden lightning wrapped around the blade, the entire weapon trembling faintly. Seeing this, Hukin felt a spark of interest instead. In the next instant, Han Senga burst forward, teal-green light exploding around her. Yet the fully charged draw slash she had prepared for so long failed to touch him. Hukin merely leapt upward and avoided it. Han Sengo was completely stunned. He dodged it. He avoided my lightning draw slash just by jumping. from midair, Hukin found it fascinating by electrifying both the scabbard and blade to create magnetism, then layering that force onto the draw. She had essentially turned the attack into a railgun-style strike. Moments later, Hukin landed it firmly on the ground. "So far, your technique is the best I've seen," Hukin said calmly. "But you missed the most important thing, timing. You're too obsessed with speed." Han Senga's flaw was laying a magnetic rail through space to maximize acceleration. No matter how fast or powerful it was, an attack with such an obvious trajectory would never be taken head-on. Frustration filled Han Sung-a's mind. She convinced herself that Hukin had just gotten lucky. Drawing her sword again, she launched an even fiercer assault. "Even without that move, I can beat someone like you." Reality disappointed her once more. Her attacks were effortlessly avoided. "You're an idiot," Hukin said coldly. "If I can dodge your fastest attack, how could something this simple ever hit me?" The words completely ignited Han Sang-a's rage, overwhelming her ability to think. Driven by that fury, she unleashed her strongest attack. Saw it instantly. She was forcibly compressing mana beyond her limits. If she continued, her body would collapse first. In a flash, Hukin appeared before her. "Your effort was real, but this fight ends here." Before making a move, Hukin spoke with casual amusement. "If it starts to hurt, raise your left hand." The next instant, a dull thud echoed as his fist slammed hard into Han Senga's abdomen. Even without using full strength, the blow made her retch violently. Seeing this, Hukin followed up with a flurry of punches, striking her face without mercy. Finally, one heavy punch landed squarely on her face. After that hit, Han Senga's consciousness began to drift. With a loud thump, the highly anticipated prodigy collapsed, not as the victor, but as the defeated. The sight left everyone in shock. He had completely suppressed Han Senga. She was one of the Academy's top students. Because Hukin looked so unremarkable, many assumed Han Senga was all show, believing she relied too much on mana and neglected physical training. At that moment, Hukin sensed movement behind him and thought she was trying to continue the fight. But when he turned around, he saw her slowly raising her left hand. Her entire body was in a disoriented state, barely capable of standing. Hukin found it oddly amusing. He had casually told her to raise her left hand if it hurt, and she actually did, truly an Academy student. Meanwhile, a staff member hurried toward the referee. The man whispered something into the referee's ear, causing his expression to grow increasingly serious. Moments later, the referee announced, "The match schedule has been adjusted. Winner, please take a short rest." The announcement puzzled. Hukin, hadn't the match already ended? Why was he being told to prepare again? The referee's next words answered him. "Up next, the winner Hukin will participate in a special match against an active duty hunter. This match has been personally approved by the association president, and all arrangements are complete." All eyes turned to the massive screen, and as the name appeared, the crowd erupted. Hukin narrowed his eyes, judging the opponent to be a seasoned veteran. A special match. Did he step forward to test my strength? It wasn't the first time he'd seen something like this, even in another world. A sharp scraping sound echoed as steel dragged against the arena floor. "Your name is Hukin, right?" The woman said. "I'm Lee Son. Let me see whether you're still hiding any other abilities." Her gaze was calm yet oppressive. "This stage is far too small for you. Would you be interested in a match with me? If it feels like too much, you can refuse, I understand. This is rather sudden." When Hukin saw who it was, he let out a bitter smile. It was Lee Son, the top 10 hunter that Kid had mentioned. More importantly, the composure and pressure she radiated were anything but an act. She was a true professional hunter who had survived countless battles. With Hukin's current body, even wielding a spear facing her head-on would be difficult. And yet, for some reason, the corner of Hukin's mouth curved upward. "If you want to test my strength, then come." The referee beside them froze slightly. "Aren't you going to rest first?" Lee Son caught the unmistakable fighting spirit in Hukin's eyes and smiled faintly. "Looks like you're the same type as me." Hukin returned the smile, excitement flashing through him. "Then let me see if the strongest in this world is worthy of my acknowledgement." In the next instant, both of them moved and a fierce battle erupted. Their clash left the entire audience stunned. Even the referee was sweating, unsure how to commentate on what he was seeing. After blocking another one of Lee Son's attacks, who can show no sign of ease, he could clearly feel just how powerful this woman was. Such overwhelming strength packed into a female body. It rivaled any male hunter without question. In the next moment, to break free from her relentless assault, Hukan twisted his wrist, spinning the spear shaft in his palm and forcibly knocking her attack aside. Hukan put his full strength into that strike, forcing Lee Son to stagger backward step by step. Even so, Lee Son remained composed. She was clearly still testing him, holding back her true power. Compared to earlier, Hukan's speed had already dropped noticeably. After fighting this S-rank hunter for so long, exhaustion was finally showing on Hotson's face. It wasn't that Lee Son lacked openings. His current body simply couldn't keep up with the combat instincts forged through countless life and death battles. Lee Son, however, was growing genuinely excited. It had been a long time since she'd met someone like Hukan. Though they weren't on the same level of power, he truly deserved to be called strong. She would have liked to keep fighting, but she could tell he was reaching his limit. Stepping forward, Lee Son spoke with a hint of approval. "You've done remarkably well. I thought you'd last about 5 minutes at most. I didn't expect you to hold out for a full 30. Before the words even settled, she charged forward. "Since you're already tired, I'll make this easier for you. It's time for you to step down and rest." Seeing this, Hukan tightened his grip on the spear shaft. There was no stored mana left in his body, and the mana in the air was scarce as well. He let out a slow breath, forcing his mind into calm. This wasn't a move he wanted to use, but now he had no choice. His body leaned back sharply as he prepared to meet Lee Son's next assault. His eyes locked onto her movements. The instant she exposed even the slightest opening, he would unleash Paradox Flame. The moment Paradox Flame erupted, shock flashed across Lee Son's eyes. But instead of retreating, she cut straight through it, her blade descending and cleaving the attack in two. Realizing he hadn't injured her, Hukan immediately retreated, widening the distance between them. A satisfied smile appeared on Lee Son's face. That last strike should have left Hukan unable to dodge, yet somehow he still managed to evade it. "In that black aura around you," she continued, "what exactly is it? You used it to attack me just now, didn't you?" "It was cut apart by my blade." Hukan spoke calmly. "That's Paradox Flame. It's my final trump card. Back in that other world, it was my most frequently used ability and the power I trusted the most. This black flame isn't like ordinary fire. The reason my clothes remain intact is because it can't burn physical matter. Instead, each flame consumes abstract concepts I designate as fuel. With my current output, I can't ignite concepts with a high ignition point like identity, memory, or reason." In the next instant, Hukan surged forward. His spear spun violently in his hands, letting out a sharp roar. Right now, the only thing he could burn was his own fatigue. The change genuinely shocked Lee Son. "Your speed, it's faster than before. Were you still holding back while fighting me?" Who could ignore her words? His figure blurred like a teleport and appeared directly in front of her, spears slashing out in a single motion. Disbelief filled Lee Son's eyes. "You recovered your strength in such a short time. How is that even possible?" As she finished speaking, Lee Son vanished from the arena with a sharp whoosh. In the next heartbeat, she reappeared in front of Hukan at nearly the same blink, and you miss its speed. Both weapons swung at once, steel clashing in a rapid, ringing exchange. As the fight dragged on, Lee Son began to sense something was wrong. The mana density in the air kept fluctuating, yet the arena's formations remained unchanged, leaving only one possible explanation. All of it was caused by Hukan's Paradox Flame. Just as ordinary fire releases energy by burning matter, Paradox Flame releases mana by consuming abstract concepts. Hukan used mana to ignite the Paradox Flame, and the flame in turn burned his fatigue to generate even more mana. It formed a self-sustaining loop. Fatigue was consumed, converted into mana, and that mana reignited the flame again and again. In other words, Hukan specialized in endurance combat. The longer the fight lasted, the more his opponent's condition declined, while he maintained a constant half-fatigued equilibrium and kept fighting. At that moment, Lee Son suddenly appeared in front of Hukong and swung her sword. With a sharp metallic clang, her strike shattered the arena floor, but it still failed to hit him. Lee Son slowly raised her head, her tone calm, but heavy with pressure. "Do you really intend to keep going?" Who can step out from the swirling dust? At that moment, he looked like someone clinging tightly to another person's leg, refusing to let go. He chuckled. "I planned to drag this into a war of attrition from the start, and now you're telling me to give up? I can keep going right now. You know that, don't you?" He mocked. "So tell me, does someone as shameless as me earn your approval?" Fatigue finally surfaced in Lee Son's eyes. She had deliberately suppressed her strength to fight Hukan at a comparable level. If she fought seriously, the match might have ended in a single strike. She spoke evenly. I doubt anyone would like someone who refuses to know when to stop. When you burn a tree, all that remains is ash. An ash that is already burned cannot be burned again. Paradox flame is the same. It leaves residue. When everything is reduced to ash, that is the moment the flame disappears and the moment your life ends. Lee Sung glanced at the timer on her wrist. 4 hours and 17 minutes had passed. Hyukin was completely pinned to the ground at this point. She looked down at him and asked, "You've held out for a long time. Do you still want to continue?" Hyukin gave up without hesitation. "Please let me go. If this keeps going, I'll actually die." With his withdrawal, the winner of the match was officially declared, Lee Son. Lee Son reached into her coat and took out a lollipop. The moment it appeared, her subordinates froze in shock. She casually tossed the lollipop toward Hokan. Along with it came a business card. "That's your reward for all the hard work," she said. "My card's in there too. Make sure you call me." Hokan looked down at the card. It read, "Partner of Jean Nuabi LLC Headhunter, Lee Son." She lowered her voice. "We'll talk details later. Call me after you've rested." 2.5 hours later, Hokan bit down and crushed the lollipop. He was stunned by the smart device in front of him. In his original era, identity proof meant handwritten documents. Yet this phone handled authentication, second-hand equipment trading, messaging, and calls all at once. It reminded him of the other world he once lived in, almost like long-distance magical communication. Just then, a massive man stepped in front of him. "You're Hunter who can, right? You look way better in person than on camera." The man was clearly over 2 meters tall. After speaking, he handed Hokan a business card. The card read, "Thai by Company Limited Lee Song-hyun." Lee Song-hyun stated his purpose directly. He wanted Hokan join his team. With enough experience under his command, he believed Hokuin would truly shine. Hokuin looked up at him. The man didn't seem to be lying. Yet Lee Sung's expression suddenly surfaced in his mind. The faint blush on her face and her insistence that he call her after getting some rest. Hokan put Lee Sung-hyun's business card away. He already had prior commitments, so he couldn't give a clear answer yet. "I need some time to think it over before I decide," he said. Instead of getting upset, Lee Sung-hyun burst out laughing. "Did you really think I'd force you to decide on the spot? I'll give you all the time you need." Hyukul had assumed he was easygoing until Lee Sung-hyun suddenly pressed a hand down on his shoulder. Hokuin stared straight back at him, his gaze sharp and unyielding. Lee Sung-hyun simply told him to think carefully, adding that he trusted Hokan to be a smart man. With that, Lee Seong-hyun turned and walked away, leaving Hyukin standing there in silence. What caught Hyukin off guard was just how direct the man had been. That alone convinced him. He wouldn't be joining that guild, and he wasn't even going to consider it. 10 minutes later, Hyukin called Lee Son and asked where he could find her. She sent him an address right away, a small room on the 2nd floor of the Hunter Association building. When Hyukin reached the 2nd floor, he spotted a shop called the Cabin exactly as described. The staff greeted him enthusiastically. After all, Hyukin was something of a celebrity now. "Welcome to the cabin. The person inside has been waiting for you." Hearing his footsteps, Lee Son turned around and waved him over. She looked surprised that he'd arrived so early and asked if something had happened. Hokan briefly explained what he'd just experienced. Someone had tried to recruit him into a guild, a massive guy to be precise. Lee Son remained calm. That must have been Lee Song-hyun from the Tai-bai guild. Once he shows interest in someone, the other guilds usually back off. Hokan chuckled softly. "So even your guild is wary of him?" "If that's really the case, I'll admit I'm a little disappointed." To his surprise, Lee Son didn't try to recruit him at all. Instead, she asked, "What do you think about working without belonging to any guild? I mean, as a freelancer?" That immediately caught Hu Kang's attention. Clearly, Lee Se-eun thought differently from everyone else. She was suggesting that guild missions didn't necessarily require guild membership. She added that Yoon Hyun-song was probably planning to offer Hokan nothing more than an entry-level position. Hokan slammed his hand on the table. An entry-level role? Then what exactly is a partner hunter supposed to be? Lee Son began to explain. Guild-affiliated hunters typically fall into 3 ranks: entry-level, senior, and partner hunters. Entry-level and senior hunters work in teams led by a partner-level hunter and can essentially be viewed as salaried employees. Partner hunters, on the other hand, hold shares in the guild rather than earning a fixed salary. They receive a cut of the guild's net profits, practically making them co-owners. The whole system sounded exactly like a law firm. Lee Son had heard that when the hunter guilds were first established, their structure was modeled after legal practices. In her view, Hyukin didn't necessarily need to join a guild and climb from entry level to senior hunter step by step just to become a partner hunter. Hyukin understood what she meant. As long as he built enough reputation and achieved results people couldn't ignore, the guilds would come looking for him on their own. That realization clearly pleased Lee Son. She felt there was no barrier at all when talking with Hyukin. What puzzled him, though, was her habit of handing him candy. Since he sat down, she'd already given him 2. Still, there was a practical problem. Hyukin had no connections and no resources. How was he supposed to land any decent commissions? Felt like an uphill battle from the start. Lee Son waved it off, saying that wasn't an issue at all. She could help with that part and she'd do it for free. That only made Hyukin more suspicious. There was no such thing as a free lunch. So he asked bluntly, "Why are you going this far for me?" Lee Son slipped her hand into the file folder. "In the future, when you've built enough fame that guilds start competing to recruit you, I just want you to remember that there was once a woman who helped you." To Hyukin, it sounded like she simply wanted him to owe her a favor. She then slowly pushed the folder toward him. "Want to take a look? Whether you accept it or not is entirely up to you." Hyukin opened the folder and began to read. It was a commission from Incheon City targeting a place called Jiaodong Island. 2 years ago, an attempt had been made to eliminate a corrosion rift there, but it failed, leaving behind a corrupted zone. Hyukin initially assumed the job was to deal with the corrosion rift itself, but instead, the task was to patrol Jiaodong Island, monitor for any new rifts, and eliminate them if they appeared. The mission was scheduled for a month later with an advance payment of 5 million won and an additional 15 million upon success. You can toss the documents onto the table. Considering the life-threatening nature of the job, the pay was far from generous. Lee Son, however, looked excited. "If you think it's unfair, then get stronger and get famous. Even when your pockets are full, money will keep finding its way to you." At that moment, all Lee Son wanted was Hyukin's answer. "Yes or no?" Hyukin spoke slowly. "If you put it that way, then I'm in. I'm the kind of person who enjoys pushing my limits." 30 minutes later, 2 cars were speeding down the highway. At the same time, Lee Son was on the phone with a mysterious man. She briefly introduced Hyukin. He's a civilian who cleared a tournament that enforced weapon usage barehanded. The response on the other end was simple, not bad. Lee Son burst out laughing. "That assessment is way off. He fought me head-on for a full 4 hours. The voice on the phone sounded stunned. "Are you serious? Was it that only because your power was suppressed?" Lee Son let out a cold laugh. "I'm a veteran hunter with over a decade of combat experience. Experience earned by surviving hellish environments. By all logic, I should have toyed with him. Instead, I was locked in battle with him for more than 4 hours." A bold thought crossed her mind. Even if she were given another chance at life, she might never encounter a monster like Hyukin again. After a brief pause, the man replied, "No matter how highly you rate him, that mission clearly requires hunters with prior field experience. Even if his skills are impressive, can he really hold his own when teamed up with veterans?" Lee Son told him not to worry. She had already arranged for someone with plenty of experience to work alongside Hyukin. The man then asked another question. "What if that kid eventually reaches your level?" Lee Son smirked coldly. "This might make you uncomfortable, but you'll just have to deal with it." Her answer was blunt. "If Hyukin ever reaches my level, even the boss might not be able to beat him." The scene shifted back to a month earlier. At that time, Hyukin had ordered a package online. The delivery driver complained nonstop. "This thing is insanely heavy. What on earth did the buyer order?" After dropping the package at the door, the driver hurried off to the next delivery. Once the hallway felt quiet, who could open the door and picked up the package. Soon, a long black case lay on his table, the weapon he had purchased online. With a sharp click, Hyukin flipped the latches open with both hands. The moment he saw the weapon inside, his eyes widened slightly. Its design was almost unbelievable. From every angle, the spear matched Hyukin's expectations perfectly. Using it in combat shouldn't pose any problems at all. Along with it came a vial of green liquid, a spirit potion. Hunters typically rely on these in emergencies. Packed with highly concentrated mana, it's extremely useful when mana is urgently needed. Normally, managing mana works much like using a water dispenser. Hunters draw mana from the air, store it inside their bodies, and release it when necessary. A spirit potion simply allows that entire process to happen in a very short time. Who can, however, use mana differently from most people. He skipped the storage phase entirely, absorbing mana directly from the air and using it on the spot. The advantage of this method was clear since he drew on ambient mana. There was practically no hard limit. On top of that, as mana flowed through his body again and again, the channels themselves gradually strengthened, allowing him to handle greater amounts over time. Still, there was a downside. Before those mana channels fully matured, the amount he could control was limited, making it hard to unleash powerful bursts in short window. With no time to wait, the safest option was to store some mana in advance. Who could down the entire vial in one go? If he trained like this for about a month, he was confident he'd reach the level he needed. A month later, the scene shifted to Jiaodong Island in Incheon. A long line had already formed at the assembly point. Everywhere he looked, there were hunters preparing for the operation. After staff verified Hukin's information, he was assigned to Squad 8. Soon, he found himself waiting beneath a sign marked with the number 8. While Hukin remained quiet, the other hunters chatted excitedly. This month's payout should be pretty good. I wonder when we're moving out. As Hukin rested in meditation, he suddenly heard someone call his name. Turning around, he saw Hunter Han Senga. Her hair was noticeably shorter than before. It seemed she'd realized long hair was a liability in combat. Han Senga approached him with the intention of teaming up for the mission. Hukin asked curiously, "There's so many hunters here. Why choose me?" She answered honestly. She believed Hukin was strong, and by working together, she wanted to observe and learn from his fighting style. Hukin was left speechless. Looks like another burden. One he wouldn't be shaking off anytime soon. If you can keep up with my pace, then follow me. At that moment, a staff member cut in and interrupted their exchange. Now that all members of Squad 8 are present, we'll begin the mission briefing. Since we have first-time participants, I'll be explaining some of the basics as well. I ask our veteran hunters for their understanding. Corrosion rifts are currently classified as level 1, 2, 3, and unranked. The closer a rift is to level 1, the more dangerous it becomes. In addition, the first rift to appear in a specific area is designated as an alpha. At present, the Alpha Corrosion Rift on Jiaodong Island is located at a church in the northern part of Insuri. Although it remains unranked, given the unpredictable nature of rift escalation, we strongly advise you not to approach it. Your assignment is to patrol Wing Neri in the eastern side of Jiaodong Island, identify any new corrosion rifts, and eliminate them if they appear. A dissatisfied voice immediately rose from within the team. You're sending a rookie on a rift-clearing mission. Are you serious? The staff member ignored the complaint entirely and led the team straight to the operation zone. Once there, Hukin overheard people warning about how dangerous the area was. Even from a distance, they claimed they could feel a bone-chilling energy as if their blood were about to freeze. To Hukin, it all felt overly dramatic. Han Song tapped Hukin's thigh lightly with the back of her blade, signaling him to move. Operations had officially begun. The staff member shouted, "Conditions on the island are being relayed in real time to the offshore control room. If you require assistance, contact them immediately. Hunters, I wish you all the best." After reaching their designated area, the group began organizing and discussing an action plan. The mission required surveying 2 regions within 1 week. Just as the discussion was gaining momentum, Hukin's voice cut through it. He pointed at the map on his phone. "I suggest setting up a base at Wazio Temple and operating outward from there." Several people reacted with open hostility. "Who are you? I've never seen you before. Are you a rookie? And why Wazio Temple? Don't think a newbie gets to give us orders." Hukin ignored the emotional outburst and calmly explained his reasoning. "From Wazio Temple, we can overlook the Yunari area and the temple buildings are still intact. We can use them for lodging. That's basic field logic. Did none of you think of that?" What Hukin hadn't expected was that his suggestion would completely set them off. "There are plenty of places nearby we can stay. What if we get surrounded after climbing the mountain?" Hukin let out a cold laugh. "We're not fighting tens of thousands of enemies. How exactly do you expect to get surrounded up there?" His retort only made them angrier. "No matter what, we're not taking orders from an inexperienced hunter like you." At that point, Hukin realized that no matter the world, there were always people who ignored basic logic. So he made a clean decision in the middle of the argument, split up. They could follow their plan and he'd follow his. Hyukin had assumed only Han Senga would come with him, but to his surprise, a third person joined their small group. He glanced at the man beside him out of the corner of his eye and sensed that his mana level was slightly higher than Han Senga's. If you can remember correctly, his name was Kim Min-jae. Curious why Kim Min-jae tagged along, Hyukin asked, and the answer made him chuckle. Kim Min-jae said both of them were probably on their first mission and he was worried that two rookies moving alone might get into trouble. So he came along to keep an eye on things. At least there was one dependable person in the team. Just then, Hyukin's gaze snapped forward. He had already sensed something was wrong. In the next instant, he abruptly changed direction. As the other two stared at him in surprise, Hyukin raised his left hand, signaling them to stop. He made a silencing gesture warning them not to make a sound and quietly told them he would check the other side. Kim Min-jae cautiously peeked ahead to assess the situation. What he saw made his breath catch. Dozens of monsters were running through the forest. The numbers were overwhelming, roughly 50 in total. He suggested taking a detour and avoiding a direct confrontation. Who can lift a hand to calm him down? Don't panic, he said. What's your unique skill? Kim Min-jae hesitated instead of answering right away, which made Hyukin's expression sharpened. Was he actually planning to fight them head-on? That hesitation made Hyukin turn serious. Hunters fighting corrupted creatures was only natural. I'll ask you again, he said firmly. What exactly is your unique skill? Hyukin soon learned that Kim Min-jae's attribute was fire, and that his most confident ability was fireball. Good, Hyukin said. Then wait for my signal and launch the first attack. Kim Min-jae froze. He hadn't expected Hyukin to order an attack so decisively. For a moment, he couldn't keep up with Hyukin's line of thinking at all. Before Kim Min-jae could fully process Hyukin's line of thinking, Han Senga spoke up. If Kim Min-jae is handling the attack, then what should I do? Kim Min-jae tried to stop them. Facing 50 enemies with just 3 people felt reckless, especially when they were supposedly on their first mission. We should regroup while we can still contact the other hunters. Hyukin shook his head. There was no time. It would take far too long for the others to reach their position. Their situation was different. Hyukin's group had set out directly from Wazio Temple, while the rest of the hunters were still sweeping the coastline for other possible rifts. On top of that, using the radio blindly wasn't a smart move. There is no guarantee that any hunter who picked up the signal could arrive in time. Worse still, if the monsters scattered while they waited, they could become a threat to other teams. Once he calmed down, Kim Min-jae analyzed Hyukin's reasoning and realized it made perfect sense. Even if there were hunters nearby, there was no guarantee they would rush over immediately, especially after the earlier conflict. That meant only the 3 of them could deal with the monsters. Under these unfavorable conditions, a surprise attack was their best option, making Kim Min-jae's fireball absolutely critical. Who couldn't waste time on unnecessary explanations and laid out the plan directly. Kim Min-jae hit the center with fireball. I'll block both flanks and keep them from escaping. Hearing the assignment left Kim Min-jae stunned. The plan was so precise it felt as if had already seen every possible outcome. For a moment, Kim Min-jae wondered what kind of person Hyukin really was. He felt like a leader forged through countless battles. They waited patiently for the right moment, soon spotting a large group of monsters clustering together. That was the signal. Kim Min-jae unleashed fireball without hesitation. In the next instant, before the monsters could react, a massive burst of flames slammed into them. The fireball's power was overwhelming, reducing several monsters to ash in a heartbeat. Still, Kim Min-jae needed time to prepare another spell. During that window, Phuket would hold the line and block every incoming attack. Kim Min-jae brought his hands together near his forehead, continuously compressing and channeling mana. In the next moment, Hyukin shot forward, his speed almost impossible to track. Murderous intent filled his eyes. His only priority now was to pin the monsters in place, and by Kim Min-jae the time he needed to cast again. With a single burst of speed and a sweeping strike, Hyukin cut down several rift monsters. To maximize efficiency, proper division of roles was essential. His job now was to buy time for his teammates until the next fireball was ready. At that moment, a creature lunged straight at him, who could ignore the attack completely. He swung his spear in a wide arc, dropping several more monsters in one motion. There was no way he would let any of them get close to Kim Min-jae. Still, holding a line alone wouldn't be enough forever. He needed Han Sung-a's support. Hyukin spoke up, "Your turn." In the next instant, a sharp, ringing draw slash echoed beside him. With a single strike, Han Sung-ah shattered the bodies of 3 goblins. She exhaled deeply and said the job was done. For now, it was up to Kim Min-jae. Almost at the same time her voice faded, a surge of blazing energy erupted. Kim Min-jae's fireball was ready. Who can quickly signal them to wait? Hold on. Fire after I move. Getting hit by that would be a problem. The moment who can clear the area, Kim Min-jae unleashed the fireball. The blazing mass shot forward like a runaway beast charging straight toward the monsters. A thunderous explosion erupted where Hyukin had been standing just moments earlier. He had already leapt clear before the impact. Immediately after, Hyukin tightened his grip on the spear. In the chaos following the blast, 2 monsters tried to flee, but Hyukin wasn't about to let them escape. Moments later, the smoke in the forest slowly began to clear. Hyukin drove his spear firmly into the ground. The ambush had been a complete success. Every monster was eliminated, though the fight had taken a toll on all 3 of them. Hyukin was about to praise their teamwork when he suddenly sensed something off behind him. Turning around, he saw Kim Min-jae aiming a handgun straight at his head, his expression tense and focused. Then Kim Min-jae broke into a grin. Mind moving? You're blocking my target. Hyukin felt speechless. He thought Kim Min-jae was about to shoot him. In the next instant, Kim Min-jae pulled the trigger twice, the shot striking the monster and dropping on the spot. They were implanting microchips into the monsters' bodies. Once the mission ended and the area was declared safe, the contracted salvage dealers would come to collect them. Salvage dealers specialized in extracting usable byproducts directly from corpses. After the chips were implanted, those dealers would handle the bodies once the mission concluded, gathering anything of potential value. The items would then be appraised, sold, and the profits distributed. The dealers took their contractual commission, while the remainder went to the families of fallen hunters, who can ask whether those dealers could be trusted. Kim Min-jae assured him it was safe as long as a reliable salvage dealer was chosen and a contract signed in advance. As they spoke, a monster lay hidden among the trees, watching Hyukin intently. In the next instant, it launched a sudden attack, blasting fragments of stone across the ground. Hyukin reacted instantly, grabbing Kim Min-jae and pulling him clear of the impact zone. Otherwise, both of them would have been severely injured. Once they reached a safe distance, Hyukin tossed Kim Min-jae aside and turned to face the creature. Kim Min-jae felt a surge of frustration. They had just wiped out a whole group of monsters and now another one appeared. The monster let out a chilling laugh, opening its mouth to reveal rows of grotesque fangs. Expression hardened. This was clearly the leader of the earlier monsters. With a piercing roar, the creature's howl echoed through the forest. No one could tell whether it was calling for reinforcements. Hyukin cursed under his breath. If it was going to fight anyway, why hadn't it charged him with its underlings earlier? Challenging all 3 of them alone was nothing but suicide. The bat leader let out a shrill grating laugh. Hyukin could feel the mana surging within it. This was on a completely different level from the lesser monsters. Hyukin shouted for his teammates to stay back, ordering them not to interfere. He would handle it alone. The creature's power was overwhelming. If it caught up, none of them would escape. The 2 froze. Normally, a monster like this required all 3 to fight together. You can cut them off sharply. I'll say this once, retreat now. Don't make me repeat myself unless you want to go home with your heads separated from your bodies. The words left them stunned. That was a terrifying way to put it. Hyukin shook his spear and told them again to leave immediately. Fighting alone would let him unleash his full strength without restraint. He roared, "Come on in, you damn bat leader." In moments, Hyukin clashed head-on with the bat leader. Han Sang instinctively moved to help, but Kim Min-jae stopped her. Now's not the time. We'd only hold him back. And despite appearances, Hyukin wasn't actually being overwhelmed. None of the bat leader's attacks had landed, not even once. They hadn't even brushed the edge of Hyukin's clothes. Han Sung-ah also noticed something else. Hyukin's speed and perception were terrifying. If she were the one fighting, she doubted she could dodge those attacks. With a twist of his waist, Hyukin slipped past another strike from the leader. Even as he evaded, he counterattacked. Wherever his spear passed, darkness followed. As the black flames continued to build, the bat leader's movements grew slower and slower. Though it looked like a fierce struggle, the truth was that Hyukin was completely toying with the creature. Han Senga stood frozen in shock. Was Hyukin really a rookie hunter like her? He looked far more like a veteran hardened by countless battles. At the same time, the monster leader launched another attack at Hyukin. Hyukin let out a little laugh. Perfect. Let's see if you're even worth me going all out. In the next instant, his body skimmed along the ground as he slid backward, creating distance. Then he hurled his spear straight into the air. Han Sengo was stunned, throwing his weapon skyward at a moment like this. What was he thinking? From above, the spear began to fall while the monster continued its charge toward Hokan. Kim Min-jae was equally shocked at the most dangerous moment. Hokan had seemingly discarded his weapon. In a split second, the monster closed the distance. Puka didn't panic in the slightest. He simply stared at it, expressionless. With a wet thud, the monster's head dropped in front of him. The spear he had thrown moments earlier was his final strike. Falling from above, it pierced straight through the monster's neck. Even with its neck impaled, the creature still struggled, a testament to its terrifying vitality. But the outcome was already decided. Hyukin wasn't about to give it any chance to turn the tables. Before the others could even react, he yanked the spear free and drove it repeatedly into the monster's head, ending it for good. Kim Min-jae stood there in disbelief. Just moments ago, it had looked like Hyukin was being overwhelmed, and now the monster was dead. What had just happened? Hyukin turned to Kim Min-jae and asked, "Is it really normal for something like this to show up here?" Kim Min-jae had his doubts as well. For a creature that wasn't even a true corruption core unit. If this area was a corruption zone, it should have been rated at least level 3. Corruption units were divided into 4 levels. And according to the briefing, the Alpha Corrosion Rift on Bridge, East Island was listed as unrated. That left only one explanation. The Alpha Corrosion Rift had already escalated to level 3. This needed to be reported immediately. Han Sang-a hesitated at first, but Hyukin told her to think it through. If it weren't level 3, none of this would make sense. Kim Min-jae's expression turned grim. The gap between unrated and level 3 was massive. If this was true, very few hunters would make it back alive. This island was far more dangerous than expected, and the situation had to be escalated at once. Kim Min-jae suggested they should go rescue the other hunters first. With Hyukin's strength, even a level 3 zone might be manageable. Hyukin rejected the idea outright. He couldn't possibly find and save every hunter still operating on the island. He had limits too. He told them firmly that their mission wasn't to rescue endangered hunters, but to identify and eliminate any additional corrosion rifts. In this kind of work, casualties were unavoidable. Han Sang-a then asked him a question. "If you were in that situation, what do you think you'd feel like?" "If you were the one in danger," she said, "wouldn't you feel wrong, angry, and desperate to be saved?" Hyukin's expression darkened completely. Are you trying to save them with the mindset of the dead? He wasn't dismissing human emotions. He was talking about outcomes. If you want to go save them, I won't stop you. Just don't force that choice on me. Hyukin told them coldly to drop that naive savior mentality. There were deaths in this world that simply couldn't be avoided. When facing such an end, no matter what emotions he carried, he would accept it with the resolve to die. If trying to save a handful of hunters caused the corrosion rift to worsen and led to even more deaths on this island, that would be the real sin. In desperate situations, hesitation was the most dangerous thing of all. If they continued carrying that emotional mindset into their missions, they wouldn't survive long in this world. As night fell, the group found a place to rest, settling on an abandoned house as their temporary shelter. The building was completely empty, with no signs that any corrupted creatures had lingered there. Kim and Jae checked the area thoroughly and found nothing unusual aside from the dim lighting. Thanks to those lights, they could still roughly track the positions of other hunters. But from Hu Kang's perspective, the lights also exposed their own location, making it inherently dangerous. If they were dealing with minor enemies, that risk was manageable. But if something like the Bat Leader showed up, it would be a serious problem. Hyukin pulled out his phone and sent a warning to the other hunters. "This is Squad 8. Based on recent encounters, the Alpha Corrosion Rift may have escalated to level 3. Turning on lights indiscriminately could draw high-risk targets. Please avoid doing so if possible." Once the core of a corrosion rift was destroyed, all creatures sustained by would vanish. Without the energy source, the corrupted zone itself would collapse. After thinking it through, Hyukin found the mission surprisingly straightforward. It wasn't nearly as difficult as others had made it sound. When the time was right, he would deal with the corrosion rift directly. Before long, night fully settled in. Han Sang-a was already asleep. Kim Min-jae had also drifted off. Hyukin quietly placed an alarm device beside them. The equipment would trigger if monsters approached, allowing him to leave without worry. Once outside, Hyukin moved swiftly through the forest. He had already confirmed the Alpha Rift's location during the briefing. This night operation should go smoothly. At that moment, Hyukin sensed something was wrong. There was movement ahead in the forest. He stopped abruptly, eyes fixed forward. A familiar, unsettling laugh echoed through the trees. Hyukin's expression darkened. He had known things were going too smoothly. Sure enough, something was off. Without hesitation, he ignited his flames. But when he turned to face the threat, he realized it wasn't the monster he had expected. The creature before him was something he had never seen before. Its massive body towered over him, far larger than anything the Bat Leader could ever compare to. At the same time, an emergency erupted at the Hunter Association headquarters. Signals from several members of Squad 5 had gone completely dark, presumed dead. The management was shaken. Even worse, more casualty reports from other squads began pouring in. Damn it, what the hell had been happening in that area? The officer in charge rushed to the communications center requesting immediate reinforcements and issuing a high-priority distress call to all hunters in the zone. Moments later, another alert came in. Someone was rapidly approaching the Alpha Corrosion Rift's core. The leader immediately ordered his team to contact that hunter and tell them to stop at once. Whatever lay ahead was extremely dangerous. Then the identity data came through and everyone froze. The hunter heading toward the Alpha Core was Hyukin of Squad 8. That meant he was likely the first to locate the corrosion risk core. The leader ordered an immediate connection to Hyukin's terminal to confirm his status. A corrosion core escalating mid-operation had never happened before. In the chaos, Hyukin was the first to detect the anomaly and rush toward the core. He had to be monitored closely. The feed connected quickly. On screen, Hyukin was locked in combat, or rather sprinting for his life while being relentlessly chased by a monster. The creature was far stronger than he had anticipated, and its speed was terrifying. Then Hyukin's voice came through the Hunter Association channel. The monster behind him was absurdly powerful. Being alive at this point was nothing short of luck. While sprinting, who can curse out loud? Weren't there people assigned to investigate this place? How did no warning come through at all? When he got back, he'd shoved the corrosion core down every last one of their throats. The outburst made the Hunter HQ staff exchange awkward looks. In the end, they decided to mute his terminal. Confirming he was still alive was enough. Hyukin knew his limits. In his current state, killing that monster outright with brute force was impossible. His only option was to slowly wear it down and finish it with a decisive spear strike. But the creature in front of him completely defied expectations. It showed no signs of collapsing at all. During the daytime fight with the Bat Leader, Hyukin had drained an excessive amount of mana from Jiao Dragon Island, severely weakening that enemy. That meant he couldn't leave the island now. He had to find a spot to replenish his mana fast. At that moment, his eyes sharpened. He found exactly what he was looking for. Ahead of him, a pitch-black hole had opened in the ground like a bottomless abyss. Without hesitation, Hyukin leaped straight in. As he dropped, he even turned back and taunted the massive creature behind him, telling it to hurry up. There was something he wanted to check. At the same time, Hyukin's signal abruptly vanished from the Hunter HQ monitors. The reason was simple. He had entered the Alpha Corrosion Core. When a report came in, the leader's face went pale. This was bad, very bad. Upon entering the core itself, Hyukin realized it was far cleaner than he'd expected with barely any visible corrosion spread. He frowned. According to prior data, even Tier 5 and Tier 3 corrosion cores didn't spread that fast. So just how extreme were Tier 1 and Tier 2 supposed to be? Moments later, Hyukin erased the boundary of the corrosion rift. What awaited him next was the real threat, the true heavyweight. He wasn't the type to obsess over a fight, but if something kept provoking him, his patience would run out. Slowly, Hyukin tightened his grip on his weapon. One of the greatest flaws of Paradox Flame was its uncontrollable spread. It affected every living being except Hyukin himself, allies included. That was what made Paradox Flame both terrifying and fundamentally dangerous. The moment it exceeded the level he could control, he had no choice but to stop using it. That limitation was unavoidable. At that moment, a monster appeared ahead of him, Hyukin thrust his spear forward without hesitation. The creature let out a single shriek before going completely still. Hyukin let out a quiet chuckle. Job done. He then began actively drawing mana from the surrounding air. Guiding it into his body, he compressed and stored it. The mana surged through every corner of his body, widening his channels and reinforcing them. Hyukin exhaled deeply, faint traces of demonic energy escaped with his breath. The result was astonishing, far beyond what he had anticipated. Then cracks began to form across the sky. Hyukin glanced upward, completely unfazed. Looks like there's more coming. Soon after, several monsters identical to the previous ones emerged from the rift. Unfortunately for them, they were too late. Hukan's body had already completed its refinement. This level of enemy no longer posed a threat. 3 monsters charged straight at Hukan, and with a sharp flick of spear, he sneered, "You really are brainless. Do you still think numbers mean anything?" In the next instant, the mana bursting from Hyukin tore the monsters apart, not one of them coming close to his clothes. Hyukin was several times stronger than before, but compared to his power in the other world, it was still far from enough, barely 1% of his former strength. At that moment, a shadow appeared behind Hyukin, launching a sneak attack. A chill ran through him. When did it get that close? Almost the moment the attack began, had already pulled away. The creature had a humanoid body with the head of a rat. Its corrosion core clearly on an entirely different level. Instead of fear, Hyukin felt intrigue, wondering how many chain strikes this level could endure. The next second, Hyukin surged forward, his spear whirling with overwhelming force. He thrust once. The rat-headed creature blocked it head-on. It mocked him that strike was too slow. What it didn't realize was that the blow wasn't full speed, but it was heavy enough to crack its weapon. Hyukin locked his gaze on it and said calmly, "Twin Moon Spear, first strike, pierce." In the next instant, the creature was blasted backward by his mana. Hyukin pressed the advantage, immediately beating it down before it even understood what had happened. Twin Moon Spear was Hukan's technique. Each attack left a blue trajectory that perfectly repeated the first strike 4 additional times. If Hyukin simply follow the trajectories to attack, that would be nothing more than a basic technique, linking for confirmed hits. But his real attack was completely different from those stack strikes. His blue trajectories could attack on their own, transforming into something like twin demonic boomerangs that were nearly impossible to evade against this kind of delayed combo assault. Hyukin saw no hidden trump card that the rat-headed creature could use to turn the tables. Soon, the rat-headed monster was struck again. Once it exposed an opening, Hyukin could finish it instantly. Now it was time to end everything. In the next second, Hyukin unleashed a relentless barrage of attacks. Every strike echoed 4 times in succession, pushing the creature's body to the brink of collapse. Before long, even its head was reduced to half, yet it surely didn't think this alone meant the end. Just as Hyukin prepared to continue his assault, a box suddenly appeared in his hand. He slowly opened it. The moment he saw what was inside, Hyukin froze completely. Meanwhile, Hunter headquarters had descended into chaos as corrosion rift spread outward from the center of Bridge, East Island, while team signals dropped one after another. Faced with this scene, the leader was at a loss. Events had spiraled far beyond his expectations. Despair filled his eyes. Was this truly the end? Without a miracle, all they could do was stand by and watch the hunters be wiped out. Just then, a subordinate shouted, "Sir, you need to see this." He continued urgently. A message just came in from a hunter inside the Alpha Core region. The leader immediately switched the feed to the main screen where every channel displayed the message from Hyukin. The message confirmed that the corrosion core signal had vanished, eradicated, and that all corrosion entities encountered by hunters had disappeared. Seeing this, the leader could hardly believe it. He was witnessing a miracle with his own eyes. After sending the message, Hyukin let out a long breath. He looked up at the sky, noticing how many stars were still visible, and more importantly, how fresh the air felt, far better than in the other world. Time rewound to 2 minutes earlier as a massive wave of monsters poured out from the rift. In that instant, Han Segni fought side by side with her teammates. Her body already covered in wounds. Even her grip was failing. She was barely able to hold onto her blade. Then, out of nowhere, a surge of resolve took hold of her. She braced her right arm against her body and forced her fingers to tighten around the sword. Her eyes locked onto the monsters ahead. Their numbers now far exceeded those from daylight, and more importantly, they hadn't found Hyukin after awakening. From behind her, Kim and Jay called out, "Miss Han, do you think we can still make it back alive?" I'm starting to panic. And it wasn't an unreasonable fear. Directly ahead of him stood a dense mass of monsters, enough to trample them to death if they charged together. Han Sung-yi shot a glance back at Kim Min-jae. It was clear he was already at his limit. She didn't know if they would survive or how much longer she herself could last, but she absolutely could not fall here. In the next second, a grotesque monster lunged straight at Han Sung-jae. Her gaze sharpened instantly. She dipped her body slightly, and the lightning energy in her hand erupted in a violent surge. Only then did she realize her legs had gone completely numb. She didn't even know when it had started. Worse still, 3 monsters were already closing in from the front. Kim Min-jae was frantic, but he had no strength left to offer any support. One of the monsters was just about to sink its teeth into Han Senga's neck. Unable to bear what came next, Kim Min-jae squeezed his eyes shut. 5 seconds passed, but the scream he expected never came. When they opened their eyes again, they were met with a shocking sight. Every monster before them had vanished, reduced entirely to drifting ash. The next day, Hukin regrouped with them at the Hunter Assembly Point on Bridge East Island. The moment he took in the scene, his expression darkened. So many people were injured. Had the corrosion rift gone berserk while he was away? Seeing Hukin arrive, the others stared in disbelief. You really cleared a level 3 corrosion rift by yourself? Yet looking at his lean frame, no matter how they judged it, he didn't look like someone capable of pulling that off alone. Hukin walked a bit farther forward and soon spotted the members of the 8 squad. Kim Min-jae was genuinely stunned. He never imagined Hukin had actually handled the rift solo. Who let out a cold chuckle. It wasn't so much a conscious decision as his body acting before his mind ever caught up. Everything he did was simply to protect his fellow hunters. Since things had gone so smoothly, he figured it was time to properly play the role of a good guy and shed the villainous image he'd earned before. Just then, someone called out from behind him, introducing himself as Park Yong-kai, a branch manager from the Korean operations company, who can glance at him and ask flatly, "So you're the one who sent me here?" Park Yong-kai asked him to come along, explaining that the mayor wanted to meet him. Who can have lost count of how many times he'd been summoned like this? Being ordered around seemed to be a chronic habit of those old men. Thinking about it, Hukin suddenly remembered something important. The contract never mentioned any reward for eliminating a level 3 threat. So since he was already here, it made sense to talk numbers. After Hukin stepped out of the car, another man approached him and greeted him proactively. The man introduced himself as Lee Bitch, a coordinator in charge of partnership negotiations. As they walked, Lee explained that the mayor had been eagerly awaiting this meeting and was completely stunned when the Bridge East Island report came in at dawn. The chairman immediately ordered this meeting to be arranged, canceling all other appointments just to have a proper conversation with a newcomer. Destroying a level 3 origin on his own was something that hadn't happened since the era of the first-generation veteran hunters, and Hukin hadn't expected to hear that someone in the distant past had once achieved the same feat. It must have been an extraordinary figure. Shortly after, Hukin arrived at the mayor's office. A slightly heavy-set man appeared before him, smiling warmly. "Welcome. My name is Park Jian, the mayor of this city. My apologies for calling you out on such a gloomy day." He then invited Hukin to his private cafe, hoping they could sit down and talk things through properly. As the mayor of Incheon, Bridge East Island had long been a major headache for him, since only by resolving it could funding be approved, and negotiations with expensive corporations and guilds were notoriously difficult. Hugo took a sip of his coffee, calmly thinking that he really wanted to squeeze the mayor for a decent payout right now. When the mayor learned that, on paper, Hukin was still classified as a newcomer, he actually looked rather proud. That reaction left Hukin genuinely puzzled. He couldn't quite understand how the situation had suddenly taken this turn. It turned out that Incheon was one of each country's core regions. And thanks to the airport's world-class infrastructure, massive logistics networks flowed through it daily. On top of that, the Free Economic Zone initiative had turned places like Songdo and Changya into international hubs, attracting so many foreign investors that choices had become difficult. With enormous capital circulating through the Incheon metropolitan area and goods transported through the airport, everything pointed toward Hukin's path as a hunter being unusually smooth, almost deliberately paved with success. At that point, Hukin interrupted him, wanting to clarify one thing first. "If you're offering support on this scale, I assume you'll want something in return. For example, helping a mayor whose approval ratings are slipping secure a successful re-election." The mayor cleared his throat and gave a wry smile. "You really are well informed. Smartphones these days don't let anything stay hidden. Who can have looked it up online?" The mayor's term was set to end early next year. And judging by the current situation, the general consensus was that his chances of re-election were slim. Sweat beaded at the chairman's temple. "You're really blunt," he said. "But during this process, wouldn't approval from the Incheon city government be required?" Unlike public announcements, as a newcomer, Hukin did in fact need the mayor's permission to enter. and if handled skillfully, the mayor could easily promote himself as the one who discovered a genius hunter, weaving Hyukin into his own narrative and even claiming credit for the achievement. The mayor went on to explain that thanks to the infrastructure he had mentioned earlier, he maintained close ties with many domestic and international corporations. Pressing a hand against the coffee package on the table, he gave an example. This brand's endorsement contract was about to expire, and Hyukin's face could easily be printed on the packaging, and that was far from the only opportunity on the table. At that moment, Hyukin interrupted at him, his tone calm but sharp. "I must look pretty cheap to you, don't I?" The mayor's expression stiffened instantly, clearly caught off guard. Who could have been following the news lately? And this world seemed desperate for a new face, someone who could cut through the gloom hanging over it. His gaze hardened as he continued. "You keep saying you can give me everything, but those are things I would eventually take for myself anyway. Doesn't that seem unfair?" The mayor offered additional proposals, such as selectively assigning who can only save high-paying commissions. But to who can't, the idea was utterly boring. He waved his hand dismissively and prepared to leave, asking the mayor to pass along his congratulations to the coffee brand's current model. After all, thanks to Hyukin's refusal, that model could continue representing the brand. Meanwhile, beneath a bridge elsewhere, two men stood in the shadows. One of them spoke quietly. "It looks like the Bridge East Island experiment has failed." The man kneeling on the ground could only keep apologizing, though he added that there was at least one piece of good news. At the words "good news," the standing man immediately showed interest. The so-called good news was a clip preserved by the association from the Hunter qualification exam, clearly showing who can use in Paradox Flame. Watching the footage, the man smiled slowly. That rookie really left an impression.
Alright, that's the end of the story. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.